call to order for September 30th, 2019, the CIP work session. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones? Mrs. Keller?
Here.
Mr. Browning?
Here.
Mr. Rohr?
Here.
Mr. Hellinger?
Here.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Here.
Mayor Riggle?
Here.
Excuse Councilman Jones.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Schaefer, second by Ms. Keller. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes. Item 2 is public comment. Would you like to say anything?
Brett Latta, 376 North Sandusky. Hi, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to comment. So I'll try to be brief, as I usually do try to be brief. So I don't have a comment specifically that's directly related to the budget. In fact, I haven't looked at nuts and bolts or anything like that. But I'm here on the eve of October to talk about bats. So what does that have to do with CIP? I guess as we move forward as a city and replace bridges and culverts, I just wanted to put a plug in for bat-friendly bridge and culvert designs. I'm not an ecologist and I'm not a bridge engineer. I'm not a landscape architect, but I am a transportation professional. I understand the benefits of bat-friendly bridges and basically eco-friendly infrastructure. So I guess that's more of a generic comment. If you think about the benefits of bats, they eat lots of insects. So I don't know how much we spend as a county, city on mosquito fogging and whatnot. Some of these cities that have incorporated eco-friendly infrastructure have even seen economic benefits to this type of stuff. Believe it or not, imagine that. So, so I don't have a project-specific comment other than the Williams Street, the Point project. I didn't get to submit that kind of a comment for that specific bridge, and I know Matt Weber doesn't look like he's here tonight, but I may reach out to him, or maybe Bill can just make a note that I know our resources are strapped. I realize that, so it may seem almost silly for me to be here talking about bats, but it may not be as expensive as you may think. If we have to replace a bridge, we have to replace a culvert, whether it's a road or a bikeway, hikeway. Ted's not here tonight, but Ted's got some big ideas for bikeways, especially in forested areas. These types of eco-friendly designs, I think, could really benefit the community. So that's all.
Just for our information, what would bat friendly be for a typical culvert or bridge?
There's kind of micro habitat. There's bat boxes that can be installed under bridges.
Part of the project?
As part of a project, a bat box can be installed. Bat habitat can be incorporated into bridge designs. Again, I'm not an engineer, but spacing of individual beams, if they're the right width, would be really ideal for some bat species. So again, I'm not the one making those designs, but I do work in transportation and have just seen the benefits of eco-friendly infrastructure. So I'd be happy to research a little bit more if you had any specific questions on it. But
Okay. Great.
Thank you.
thanks.
Okay. Moving on to item 3.
Yeah, just real quickly. Now we've got a lineup tonight, and after John and after Bruce and John, we'll just talk about a couple of other projects and make sure we're all on the same page. I know we had a couple of things that came up. Councilwoman Keller asked about a traffic signal at Carson Farms Boulevard and US 36, and Bill's here tonight just to discuss that. But I think we'll just start, if you don't mind, with the Chief of Police and go from there.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
The police department's
projects are fairly straightforward, nothing that you really haven't seen before. The first starts on page 36, and that is the part of the equipment replacement fund, and the portion of that is down towards the bottom of the page. It's the police department. This is our standard cruiser replacement, replacing 4 cruisers next year, and then 1 unmarked vehicle, which will be the chief's vehicle. Those 4 cruisers, just to give you perspective, the cruisers I have in the fleet right now, I have 2 with greater than 100,000, 2 with greater than 90,000 on them, and then a couple following closely, on their heels at 80 and 70,000. So a couple have yet to come out this year, but our replacement costs will keep those cruisers coming out right around 100,000 miles typically. And then also to know is that when they come out of the fleet, we generally repurpose some of them as a second layer cruiser. So a second line cruiser, so maybe one of our school resource officers or our community relations officer will get a cruiser that's lower mileage that they can utilize, since that's a purpose-driven vehicle. That's one person who drives it, and it will accrue miles a little slower after that. And then the city also uses those other used cruisers as part of their fleet. We have stuck with the SUVs, so the Ford utility has owned the market since the Crown Vics went away. We tried the sedan, and it's way too small for, really, I can fit into it, and barely, and I'm probably one of the smaller guys in the department, so when you put the equipment into it, it's really, really tight. And the Chargers, we've looked at them, but I really don't need the Charger, and they have some mechanical issues that are fairly well known in the industry. So we have stuck with the SUVs and been actually quite happy with them. The mileage is comparable to the Crown Vics. As far as the administrative vehicle, that's the chief's vehicle. That will replace my current vehicle, which is a 2012, and then that gets repurposed as well. So my staff, so all of my captains currently share a vehicle, and that's a 2005 Ford Taurus that's running on its last leg. So we'll move that out and put my vehicle in its place. So we try to get some economy out of these vehicles where we can, and that is essentially what next year's proposal is for. It is a little higher than in previous years, and that's because Ford actually retooled the vehicle, and the cost went up about $6,000 per vehicle. And we try to, we try to reuse our equipment, but pretty much everything had to be purchased for the install. And we found that at the same time, if we replace the computer inside the cruiser, it lasts 3 or 4 years. After that, they're problematic, so we try to include that with the new purchase as well. The next project is our cruiser digital video recording system. We've been working on this, but our current system is at end of life, so it's out of warranty and not being supported anymore. And that is actually located on page 37 of the CIP. This is a project that will put cameras in, I want to say 13 of our frontline. We actually have 10 frontline cruisers, 2 K9 cruisers that we're trying to put cameras into. We'll look at possibly expanding that. And then I also have 2 interview rooms, so we record our DUI arrests, and then also our detectives have an option. They have a interview room camera that also runs off of WatchGuard. So that is the project next year for replacement of the cruiser video system. I did do some research and looked into the cost for the body camera system, and right now the cost is it's not cheap. And then on top of that, when you look at the ancillary costs as far as the storage costs, and more importantly, the personnel expense, because once you create a video, you have to have the ability to redact that video for public records purposes. So, and that's literally a minute-by-minute viewing of the video. Even though we have the redacted video, you have to view it and mark what needs to be redacted. So, just knowing that we're stretched a little bit, it would be hard for us to be able to manage that. So at this point, we're not moving forward with body-worn cameras. I'm gonna throw this out there. We just realized here, right as the meeting was started, we might have had an oversight in this, so we might have to get back with you and talk about that as far as this project next year. But we just have to make sure we have everything incorporated in our quote. But we'll get back to the city manager as soon as possible on And then I just have two updates. They're not actually part of the CIP, but I wanted to provide some updates. As you know, we've been tripping over ourselves trying to replace our records management system for the last couple years. We've tried to go forward with partnership, and that didn't work out. And then we actually sealed the deal with a vendor in 2018, and then they merged and stopped supporting the product. They supported it, but they stopped selling it. And knowing we wanted to go to a regional product, we ended up backing out of that contract. So we found ourselves in 2019 going back out and researching products, and we looked at almost northwest quadrant of the outer belt, and that fell through. But we actually have an opportunity now with some partners who are interested in going forward together, which will probably give us some pretty good economy of scale, and also some really good benefits with interoperability. So we're cautiously optimistic right now that we will be doing something in 2020. We have to do something in 2020, and then doing it with partners will really be beneficial in many ways. So that's what we're hopeful for there, and we should know more shortly on that. And then the final update is just to update you on the range project, which I talked about when I did my presentation, and I showed you the graphics, and I think the city manager sent you the pictures of where we're at now, and that is just about done. It's actually physically it's done, and now we're working on logistics. So we have a draft policy that we're going to finalize as far as making it operational, and we're handling a couple other administrative details just to make sure we have everything covered. It's been a great experience. We worked. It was a good opportunity to work with our other city departments, and it got a lot of our guys working together. And quite frankly, it really gives us a lot of opportunity to do some training and do some things we haven't been able to do to date. So we're really excited to get started on that, and looking forward. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. No pressure, but that was about 5 minutes.
Okay.
And you guys are always in competition.
We'll get after this evening now. Thank you for the opportunity. The fire department capital improvement plan is relatively easy next year, as you've been noticing. It's basically the plan that we put forth once we had the approval of the 2010 fire levy. Next year, we'll be replacing our 1989 pumper engine. That's our last remaining yellow one that you actually see right now. It's out at Station 302. That's at a cost of a little over $823,000. That includes all the new equipment for that as well. Well, that's a pretty large cost with that. It is also includes all the equipment on that. When we purchase that, we keep and purchase all new equipment. These vehicles last us for 20 years, so when you look at that, and it'll actually take 14 to 15 months for this to be built, so we will not take delivery of that until 2021. This piece of equipment, we're going to be changing vendors. We're actually going to be purchasing that here locally through the Suffolk Corporation, which is located in Dublin. So that's project number one. Project number two is a replacement of our staff utility vehicles. Those are vehicles that we keep for 10 years. We have been getting hand-me-downs for our inspectors and station cars, but for the past 2 years we have not been receiving those because those have been going to use with other city departments that have needed those. So we're picking those back up, incorporating the purchase of these vehicles within our budget at this point in time, allowing those other vehicles to be utilized throughout the city as well. So those are our big two projects for next year. Two other items I just want to put on your radar. One we talked about a little over well, at the last county city meeting, and that was when this county had announced that they had purchased the old Delaware Area Career Center North that also contained the fire grounds that the Delaware County Firefighters Association, which is no longer in existence, and the need for the update of that and maintaining that property, but also the need of having a burn tower several stories tall. So we're continuing to work and look with partners to have that and make that available, including possibly doing that down at the Career Center South. So we're continuing to work on that. The other thing is our city continues to grow, and as we work with Dave and the comp plan and the look at looking out east, eventually start planning for a 5th fire station as well out in that location. Certainly that's not anywhere in the next 5 years, but certainly something that we need to be cognizant of that fact and start planning for that. So that's really the fire department update as far as purchases and our planned purchases. And if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Chief, can you just elaborate on the, what you're looking at in terms of switching up vendors for the?
Yeah, so we've been purchasing for quite some time through Pierce, which is a company out of Wisconsin that's been known for, top quality fire apparatus. However, both myself and our firefighters have lost confidence because of some of the maintenance problems that we've been having with them, and the length of time that it is taken to get some of these vehicles repaired under warranty through them. So we're looking, well, we've had a great relationship with that company. We're going to look at going with somebody local here. We had a similar situation when we were purchasing Horton ambulances that were made in South Columbus. Now we're purchasing still Ohio-based out of Van Wert with the Braun, and have not had any problem with them. Interestingly enough, it sounds like just about everybody here in Delaware County has made the same change as far as ambulances. And there's many here in Delaware County that are using the Suffin product, and it's we're anxious to give them a try, and we have the confidence with them in making that move. So.
And I know I passed their building over there in Marysville on 33
Yeah,
Saturday.
it's actually Dublin, Washington Township.
Yeah.
Yes.
So do they actually build them there, repair them there?
A combination. They actually had
Okay.
4 plants. One is a chassis plant, which is in Springfield, Ohio. Then here locally, they have that plant, which is where they do a lot of the finishing material. They also have a ladder plant in Hilliard, and then they also have a whole completely separate plant up in New York.
Okay.
So, but ours will be built here locally.
I know I met the gentleman at the Fireman's Ball in Westerville last year when I worked it, and he gave me his card and said, Delaware will never switch. And I remember bringing you that card, so I am thrilled that you're gonna give it a try.
Absolutely. We're excited.
Yeah. It just makes more sense. It's right here.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Questions?
I just had a comment about the emergency vehicle preemption. It's so needed and will make things so much safer at intersections for your guys and for the motorists on the road, so very glad to hear that.
Yes, and actually we're planning on moving forward with part of it this year. We have $315,000 set aside. We're working with Public Works right now. It's become a little bit more global, which is a positive thing, but we'll be incorporating phase 2 in 2021 with our Public Works. And I believe it's a MORPC grant with Jess to have the rest of the intersections updated, as well as combining that with the other projects going on with
Fantastic.
that. So, no, thank you. We appreciate the support on that as well.
Great. Thank you.
It's close in time, wasn't I?
I know. Awesome. Okay, what's your other projects?
Actually, if Bill could maybe come up, we could just talk briefly.
Talk about bats?
Yeah, does that come up at your conferences at all? Yet, these environmentally friendly designs?
Yeah, already looking for bat boxes. I wanted to give a couple updates on a couple projects we talked about before. First, the Pennock project, Pennock Avenue Extension project associated with the Schultz School. We've had a number of meetings with the school, city managers had a number of meetings with the school. Looks like the project is gonna move forward, and we got a pretty good feeling that we can work together, but the cost is, we're just targeting about 350,000. We're gonna have to try to work that into our numbers somehow, and Tom's still doing some discussion with the schools. So that is something that's gonna be important to work out with the overall CIP project process. Carson Farms signal, that project has come up recently. We talked about signal there at Carson Farms in US 36. It does meet one of the 8 warrants, which is the first warrant called 8-hour warrant. Probably I don't want to say it's the least of warrants, but it's not like crash history or pedestrians. It means in 8 hours, there's enough volume there with a reduction factor to say, well, you could put a signal in. Is it absolutely critical today? Probably not, but is it something we need to probably put into our CIP now so we can target a design year and a construction year? I would say yes, we should probably do that. So we could modify the CIP and try to get that into this 5-year CIP. Probably closer to the front end of it than the very latter end of it. But that's a project we probably could go ahead and put in if that was the will of council to advance that. Timing wise, it would work nicely with our larger signal project, just heard about talking about preemption. That project in 21 and 22 should be under full swing in terms of the signals. So it's probably good timing, target that zone to try to add the signal on 36. And then third, there's just been some questions recently regarding paving project in Wesleyan Woods and our age-old issue, what do we do about the curbs? I think there was a memo that got sent around last Friday, and there is some things we can do with the curb, and we can't replace the curb, we just don't have the money there. The real issue is the curb, the flat part of the curb, which we call the gutter pan, is in bad shape. What the staff is proposing and contractor is just to try to extend the pavement planing across the road and across the curb, remove some of that damaged curb, then run the pavement all the way to the face of the curb. And to try to restore drainage a little bit. It'll protect the edge of pavement, protect the curb. Basically, we'll be buying ourselves some more years of life out of the existing curb, protect our infrastructure investment. It's much like putting a second layer of shingles on top of your house before you replace the whole roof. It's in a sense, that's what we're doing to this, and we're trying to extend the life of that curb. Very, very minor cost to that. New curb to remove and replace is gonna be $25 to $30 per foot or more. We can do this operation for under $2 a foot, linear foot on the frontage. So it's probably money really well spent. It's the same machine, same process, and really no more time in the project. It's just we can extend that paving just a little bit further. This process is really specific to roads that have the standard curb and gutter section monolithically poured. On roads that just have the single straight curb, we already go to the face of the curb with our pavement. So it's a little bit of a difference on a curb gutter section. It is performed widely in other communities, certainly Columbus and other communities, either pave over the top of the gutter pan or remove a portion of it and then pave. So we're gonna recommend that we just go ahead and try that on the Cotswold Drive and Somerset roads to see how successful we can be with that on this project. Funding is there because our bids came in, our quantity of base repair came in to our favor. So we do have the funds to go ahead and make this small change to the project scope. I can answer any questions on those 3 initiatives or anything else that I talked about previously.
Bill, regarding the signal project, what are you thinking about in terms of timing?
I would recommend that we try to find a consultant next year in 2020 to prepare plans, and then in 21 or 22 construct a signal depending upon the complexity of the actual plan development. It's pretty well standalone, but we do want to coordinate it with the upstream and downstream signals. So that's why I want to reserve a little bit of time are we going to have to control the final design a little bit to make sure we're coordinated with our larger signal project. So that would be 20, potentially to 21 to finalize the signal design. So I'd say no later than 22 construction, potentially 21.
What do you think the costs?
We're looking at about $250,000 for a mast arm, complete mast arm installation. It's a fairly long span over the width of pavement right there. Not as big as what we've seen on 23 recently, but it's a pretty significant signal. So 25,000 or so for design, another 225,000 for the actual construction.
So lining up with Carson, with Valley Side?
Mm-hmm. Yep, it signalized all 4 approaches.
So what do we need to do to get that included into the CIP?
Well, I think it would be, just discussion and a motion to include it, as Bill has recommended. I think what you're gonna show is you're gonna show some soft costs in 2020.
We could show 2020 with a target of 21 construction. If we have to slide it out, we'll know at this budget time next year if we need additional time for the design.
But you're thinking, it does meet the warrant.
Mhm.
Bruce, do you have any thoughts on that? Just from the standpoint of your activity through that area and that signal and, I mean, I know it's trying to make those left turns.
Yeah, I'd have to look at our activity and the crash history there.
Yeah, it didn't meet the crash warrant, pedestrian warrant. I think the difficulty there is it's a fairly consistent level of traffic throughout the day. So when you come out Valley Side or Carson, you always know there's cars coming. So that's what the 8-hour volume is. If you have so much traffic over 8 hours, they say a signal would be beneficial. It's not like a peak hour where you just can't get out without a signal. That's a little bit more concerning. And certainly if we had crash history there or pedestrian issues there, then my concern would be more heightened. That would have imminent risk. The 8-hour volume, I think we have a little bit of time with that. So that's why I think we don't have to hit the panic button and try to get everything done in the next 9 months. But I think if we put it on a 2-year schedule of design, coordinate with our signal project, and then construct, I think it's a good time frame.
I think it's a good
Yeah.
time frame. I was just thinking that regarding the crash history, in order to have a crash history, you have to have crashes. And that's not fun for anyone. So if we know that it's an issue and it's meeting the warrants now, it would be proactive for us to go ahead and move forward on the signal before we wait for a significant crash history, when at that point, someone may be hurt, killed, and we know that's an issue. It's really hard to pull out of there, and I've heard from several residents, not just one, very recently, asking me to take a look at that, and city staff have been real helpful with getting information regarding that.
So we'd be looking at increasing in 2021, unless there's a grant source, we're looking at increasing the CIP's allocation on page 6.
Yeah, it's proposed 25,000 to cover design
In 20,
in 20,
but then you're looking in 21.
225,000.
Okay, so we're looking at that okay. And yeah, that may, Dean, looks like it may put us out of balance. We're just gonna have to, in terms of that expenditure, that proposed expenditure in 2021. You're not looking at a grant source, Bill, you're looking at,
It's just really difficult on that road to get grant sources for that. Not without, if you had accident history, that's when you get safety funds, but we don't have that type of warrant met, so it's difficult to get safety funds for a project like that. I'm not opposed to calling ODOT and asking just for their thoughts, just to make sure we, investigate it, but it's high likely we're using that with our own funds.
What's the projected cost?
Total 250.
So you're looking at 2021, you said?
2020 for 25,000 and 20 for design, and the other 225 and 21.
So it's just that first, assuming it's general fund money, that first summary page, if you add that, it just takes the ending balance down pretty close to probably being a little bit negative, but not a material amount at the end of 21. Let's see here,
right, unless there's something that can be
offset that.
cut back. There's something else in 21, but. We just have to bring it into balance in 2021.
Sure.
Lisa, I mean, right, it was not gonna.
It's probably, we need a little bit more time to look at it than
Yeah.
just making a quick
Right.
decision.
Yeah, but,
Yeah, the issue is we just don't have a dozen of these types of projects, and the budget's really fairly small, what's actually included, so it's hard to identify something else, in streets that we're not gonna do, because there's so little there.
Could include Valley Side Drive at that same time,
Mhm.
but we don't want to do that.
No.
So the signal though, you're getting, the feedback you've gotten, Lisa, the feedback you've gotten is,
Just people saying it's really hard to pull out, and I've heard it's very hard to go left.
Yeah.
It's even hard to go right sometimes, cause if there's a car going left, then you can't see beyond that car, so you have to creep far forward, and it's just a lot of traffic there.
And we've received complaints even prior about the intersection, is because it is higher speed, and even though it's not posted 55 miles an hour or 60 miles an hour, people certainly have a lot of speed through there. So, you know, we agree, the warrant's there, the warrant's actually a year and a half old, so that certainly is not less traffic today. So we feel if we're targeting an intersection for signalization, we just don't want to put signals in for the sake of putting them in. But the public demand is there, and the science says that it's warranted.
We shouldn't have a problem coming up with 25,000 for design this year, right?
not in 20, it would just be the.
Right, 21.
And we can work to find sources. We could always, put it in there, as Dean said, and we could try to find an offsetting revenue source to help offset some of the cost.
Okay.
Is
So
there
I
general support, I mean, I'll make a motion.
make a motion to include the Carson Farms 36 signal in the 2020, 2021 CIP.
I have a motion by Mrs. Keller, second by Mr. Schaefer. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries.
Thank
Bill, I
you.
just mentioned the Arch to Council
Okay.
memo on Friday,
Mhm.
just regarding some of that base work that we talked about, so that's another small scale project, which.
Yep. Jerry Warren and I have coordinated a number of times, and we feel like it's very feasible. It was planned for probably 20 years ago. Was that 20 years ago?
Yeah.
So, it's just a matter of trying to use our glasses to see what's underground, to make sure there's holes for foundations, and the rest of it's really a pretty simple project. Just takes money.
That shortcut alley project, are you doing something with that, or?
Yeah, we're doing it as a storm project. We just have to coordinate with them on when they've raised the money, cause we've agreed to do the underground work.
Right.
And
Mhm.
I just don't know if they've raised the money or what that status
Yep.
is. We can follow up with Susan.
We're gonna do some storm yet this season back there, get that done. Then we're gonna go ahead and do the refuse enclosure, to try to clean that up where the refuse cans
Okay.
are. And then we'll go ahead and
Thank you.
repave and stripe the whole parking lot.
Yeah.
And hopefully, maybe they'll be able to do we'll be able to get the pavement improvements done in the alley next year as well. So all we'll be waiting on is kind of the aesthetic arches that Main Street was gonna do. It was a nice project.
And the new meters,
I,
new parking meters.
Yep.
I drove whole drive Friday night. I had some time to kill, believe it or not. And,
Fast.
not fast. I drove by speed. I wanted to just see the lines and drive through there. So I actually stopped and talked to 3 different residents. And one told me he thought people had slowed down. And he was, let's see, I came in from Liberty, so he was before I got to the stop sign. Not too far away, but he thought he actually had slowed down. Well, then I made that turn and stopped there, and boy, he said it did not work at all. It has done nothing. And then his neighbor came home, so then he called his neighbor up and they said the same thing. He said the city just did it because it was the cheapest way to do anything and to shut us up. I said, that's not true. I said, it was a pilot project we wanted
Mhm.
just to see. So, I don't know, have you gotten much feedback
We
at
get
all?
mixed feedback.
Yeah.
Like I said.
David Haig, who said it's
Yep.
helped, it was
Yep.
helpful, but
Okay.
yeah.
So, like I said, we'll pilot for a solid 6 months, gather traffic data and report back to see how well it's done it in terms of reducing any speed. We may
Mhm.
find that speed feedback signs are more effective than striping.
And I would suggest, though, that we pick a street with an actual speed problem to actually pilot stripes for speed. And I have an idea for one that we could use, but I wanna talk about that more during parking and safety. Just had to throw that in.
Are you still thinking about, write in and write out only?
Yeah, at 23, we're looking ways to try to advance that project. We're, end of the year, we're trying to check our budgets to see if there's any way we can afford the professional service to submit the application on our behalf for funding, for 100% funding. So if we can make that all work out, we'll report back and get the design done and apply for full ODOT funds on that project. So in a sense, it'll be right in, left in, right out. You just won't be able to go left out from the Hull Drive or straight across from Hull Drive. Your only option of Hull Drive is a right turn.
Okay.
Prevents all the crossing movements that are high risk.
And I also drove Pumpkin Terrace. I had lots of time to kill, and I don't know what to do with that one at all. It's just, I can see why it's a street. I mean, just a speedway. And it's all nice.
Which one's that?
Pumpkin Terrace, it's one way in and then one way back out. You go all the way, you get into Magnolia, which dumps back onto Bell. But,
As a shortcut, people use it, yeah.
It's a great little area.
Yep.
but,
Kind of unique.
I also don't want them, they hit this guy's house. I can see the curb, I
Mhm.
can see all the lines, all the new blocks on the front steps. Thank God his kids weren't out front.
Yeah.
I don't know. What to think about that one?
So if there's support for at least the city sharing some of that Winter Street Arch Bridge foundation work, then I can find an appropriate place. I'll work with Dean and Bill on that. And those are, I think, the only two changes. I don't know if there's anything else. I know parking is something that we didn't include in here, the parking modernization project, but it's something that Ken's been working on that will.
Yeah, we should, Kyle and I have been working, we've got a little bit more work to do before because we want to be able to come in here and talk about actual cost, return on investment, and those kinds of things, and how the project would roll out. And we just recently found out that Verizon is going to be doing some underground or understreet utility work for fiber. And so that could impact our timing on when we do meters where, because we don't want to tear it up twice, and we're also doing some sidewalk work right in downtown.
It's MCI.
Oh, okay.
MCI proposing some major fiber work.
So anyway, we've got to coordinate the timetable. We hope in the next few weeks to be able to come back with an actual proposal. This is what it's going to cost, here's return on investment, here's how we're going to roll it out, and all the reasoning behind it. A lot of work's been done behind the scenes from staff standpoint. It's been really helpful in getting this thing nailed down. So the whole goal is to manage the existing parking as best we can with the hopes of adding capacity down the road.
The other project, I'm sorry, is the maintenance, the downtown sidewalk project. We want to make sure we coordinate with.
And that's what we met today. Kyle, you looped me in on your work group, thank you. We want to be able to advance that project, but we're very concerned right now with the MCI work is extensive downtown. Last thing we-
What's involved? Are they going under the street or the sidewalk or both?
Most likely be under sidewalks, which could be a lot of sidewalk removal. Last thing we want to do is have someone replace their sidewalk and then someone comes back and tears the sidewalk back out. So we got to coordinate more with that. So we may be putting the brakes a little bit on the sidewalk project right away and instead trying to do some interim leveling in-house just to get rid of the real bad hazards so people don't continue to trip and fall. But we still need to notify property owners that might be an interim approach and we still might have to fix it. But there's a lot to coordinate right now. As Ken said, there's parking issues and then there's the potential changes in handicap parking requirements that may be coming at us too that would change how we install handicap parking downtown. So we got to really holistically look at our downtown sidewalk and parking lanes all together and make sure we're really coordinated on a whole number of fronts. And we got a good group right now working together to do that.
So you said MCI?
MCI is
Are they doing fiber optics
it'd be fiber for business.
for
Yeah.
business?
Yep.
And what's Verizon doing?
Well, but
I think it's one and the same.
Just want to say.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so.
And they're going under the sidewalk, Bill?
That's the preferable.
And will that affect sidewalk?
There's no real design at this point. It's just
Okay.
they're going through their business plan approach to see costs and, potential obstacles. We've considered behind the buildings as an option instead of in front of the buildings because of the infrastructure cost. But they're still in their early stages of, I think their business plan is would like to be able to light up businesses downtown with their fiber, but there's a lot of hurdles that we're working with them to try to overcome. I think as a goal, it's great to provide higher, better quality fiber access downtown, but we have to work through the infrastructure issues.
Kyle, I'll try to get on your calendar for next week.
Yeah, well, and just to add to that, it's a push that they're doing throughout all of Central Ohio. So we've reached out to Westerville, Dublin, other communities where they're aggressively wanting to prepare for 5G along with small cell and business broadband. So what we've tried to do as a team is to work with them to see if we can benefit our own system so that when they dig up the right of way, they only have to dig once. And when a new provider comes to town, we have additional conduit that we can take advantage of. So that's what we're trying to do to stay in front of it.
Sure.
So we're not digging it up over and over. So that's kind of the goal right now. But their timelines are aggressive, so we're trying to stay in front of them.
Yeah, good, thanks.
Was there also something competitive advantage project that Morpsey has solicited? I saw some discussion about that last week.
I'm still trying to catch up on some of the emails, but they
Yeah.
are looking at learning how to put together good applications for different funding sources for competitive advantage projects. We had 2 in the countywide competitive advantage project identified in the city. That was the Point project and the Glen Parkway extension, or the completion of Glen Parkway all the way to 36. So we've been talking with Morpsey and said, look, the Point, hopefully, cross our fingers, is a funded project now. But the Glen Parkway is not an issue, a cooperative issue between the city and county, because the alignment's largely outside city corporate limits, to look at potential funding mechanisms for this competitive advantage project. It's kind of a walkthrough tabletop exercise, I guess the best way to explain it, but we're certainly willing to let our project be that example, because if we can get feedback of, here's how we could suggest funding it, and the project's name gets out there, it's one step closer to maybe getting the funding in place to close that gap on that project and get that important linkage between 23 and 36 complete. So that's what it's all about. I don't want to get anyone's hopes up. We're not putting it on the schedule to roll forward, but like any of these big projects, you have to talk funding well in advance and to see what's available and try to get something to allow you to start these projects. So that's what we're hoping comes out of this.
I think we touched on this last time, but I couldn't retain it. I don't know. Page 6, the under revenues, the CIP allocation, 2020 starts at $759,000 and then progressively goes down, and I couldn't remember why that was.
Yeah, I'll just defer to Dean again like I did last time.
We had in those early years, 2020, we still had some large grant activity. The city's share was funding. There's not like the Point, and well, the Point's ongoing, but East William Street and a couple other the Signal projects, things where we had some match amounts. There's not a whole lot out there in 2023, 2024, similar to that. So that number in there represents what it takes to balance out the project cost down below. Obviously, increasing the revenue with the new gas tax and license fees reflects that revenue source. You really have to go, if you're looking more from the expenditure side, what's happening with resurfacing, other transportation improvements. But so that's a plug number that goes in to fill the gap between what other revenues are identified and what the total expenditures are. So,
All right, thank you.
and what like I said, there was no conscientious effort to reduce that down or anything.
Any other questions? All right, thanks, Bill.
All right, so we mentioned the Winter Street project, obviously that's minor. I do want to I don't know if we covered this when Blake was presenting, but we have in both the sewer fund capacity budget and the water fund capacity budget yet to allocate utility extensions for some of the new industrial park areas up in the Sawmill Parkway area, and that's really still remains a priority for us. It's just trying to determine what that best approach is and how to do that in a way that can induce developers to go up in that area. Because right now we just don't. There's utility. We've got all the plans. We know what we need to do. It's just really trying to orchestrate that, but it's gotta be kind of in conjunction with, a development, project and a developer and a willing landowner. I don't know, Sean, if you wanna speak on that, I know you've been part of those conversations, and we are, we haven't forgotten that. Obviously, it's a priority when you take a look at council's, the ranking of projects and priorities. Economic development is up there, and I know it's just one of these kind of, it's a challenge just because of the way the land is controlled in that area, by different landowners, so.
Yeah, there's obviously 2,000 acres out there altogether, but which direction do we go? Obviously, there's a lot of different pricing variations in the area for those who do have their land for sale. Not everybody does, right? The major landowners, the Jackson Baslaw family, who up until now has shown no interest in selling their property. So years ago, they did have it listed. I think when I first got here, it was actually listed. And then when we started the Sawmill Parkway project, the signs came down and they changed their minds. So we thought we had a bird in hand to help us move a piece of property forward, and it simply didn't happen. The landowner rejected the offer. I've turned that developer onto another piece of property, hoping maybe that landowner would be more willing to work with them, because really what Tom said is correct. We have to have a willing developer partner. Unless we're going to buy the land ourselves, we have to have a willing developer partner to at least option the land out, so that we know we're not spending it just for a build it and they will come type scenario, which rarely works anymore, right? I mean, we have to make a smart investment with a willing partner that can market the land with us, that can build the buildings if necessary, all the other infrastructure is necessary to go into the ground. So I think we're getting there, but there's also the question, I've seen what the top priority for all of you is, and that's white collar jobs for us to work on together as a team. So what does that mean for that area too? I think that's something we have to have a serious conversation on. How does that change that acreage down there, especially as you transition from the Bunty Station Road area up into the quarry, termination at Section Line Road? So is it a transitional area? It goes from more office use all the way up into heavy industry up by the quarry. How does that really look in the end? And I think that's a big part of our comp plan right now. But, it'll significantly, I think, change the way we market the area, quite honestly.
Anyway, it's just, it's out there. It's really, at some point, hopefully we can come back to you and present something that actually shows some initiative to get that, start getting that property to the point where it's gonna start developing.
Well, and the other thing is, do you want to spend that money on the east side where we have a lot of office potential and to generate even more white collar jobs? So I think there's a lot of different ways that we could spend infrastructure money. So what's the best investment?
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Sean. That's really what I had. I had a review of major revenue sources. I don't know, Dean, if there's anything that you wanted to touch on in terms of, obviously we've got the gas tax dollars, we've got the
Just in
RSO
general,
license fee.
something related, and I think we had, whether it's a finance committee or previous discussions, in the NCA South area, we did issue that debt, and we're in pretty good position with the cash flow that'll pay out. The policy issue of we had in place transportation fees that we basically $1,000 a lot. We had been showing those as a potential revenue source pending what might happen with the NCA revenues, because up until a few years ago wasn't real clear that was going to generate enough funds to pay back those improvements. Well, we're beyond that point, so we'll need to decide here sooner than later whether impact fees should get allocated to that overall cost of that project as they continue to be collected, whether from day one I've tracked the amount separately and shown that to the community authority, always indicating each year these funds aren't necessarily the community authorities to deal with. It's city funds, but we've kind of have them here as a cushion or some variation. But we've collected a little over $1 million so far since 2006. And if not for that, then there's some other sort of road improvement over there that those funds would need to be directed to. But we should, at some point between now and early next year, perhaps make that decision so it can be communicated to the Community Authority Board. The impact of it, if we basically said all fees collected from day one are going to be used for a different purpose, it might add a half a year or so to the time period that the charges will be in place. Those residents out there are paying 7.5 mils of additional property tax. Right now, it's something in the range of 2027 or so when that can be extinguished. And unlike a tax, what will more than likely happen that last year, if we're pretty good at projecting our revenues, that 7.5 mils will get rolled back to a certain amount, whatever is deemed to be necessary to pay off the remaining debt. So, again, it's might be the difference of somewhere between a half a year and a year, depending on what we do. But we should probably address that. We really didn't show anything here regarding the extension of Glen Road to the north. That's funded through residential TIF collections, and I've shared with Tom, I think, some projections out based on whatever our current estimate is. Bill, and I'm not sure when we're actually planning right now to start that improvement at Berlin Station, but so the TIF revenues that we've collected are more than sufficient to pay off at least that level of improvement, again, barring it being quite a bit more. But again, there's strings attached to how and how, how long that TIF's in place and some of those things we may want to look at. The Point project, I don't know if you saw that, looks like, although nothing's assured, that we're going to get perhaps the additional track money. I think that was kind of put into the CIP, assuming that we might get that. And what impact does that have? We're still kind of up in the air a little bit because who knows what might happen with the total cost of the project. But assuming their numbers are still in line, it could mean that $200,000 allocation we've been making out of our general discretionary money could go down or go away, which would free up some funding elsewhere. Other than potentially, I know we're still looking at some possibility with the parking garage, what impact that may have. I think I've shared some projections at some point down in the time with either the Finance Committee. If that does materialize and we're still go on that, we'll want to amend our capital plan and reflect that impact. Our development-related funds are still doing pretty good. Our capacity fee collections this year for water and sewer are probably going to be $1 million or more more than what it was last year. So we'll probably, for water and sewer, it may be up close to $4 million of capacity fees for water in a given year, and a little less than that for sewer. 6-7 years ago, those numbers were $400,000 or $500,000. So now I don't think that's going to continue forever, but it does give us a little bit more discretion for capacity type of improvements, and we'll have to consider that strategically. How that plays out. But those are the only things I can think of.
We have had some conversations with the county engineer's office regarding, Dean had talked about some, the new community authority, the Southern New Community Authority, and these transportation fees that we've been collecting, thinking that was going to be a kind of a backstop for the debt service associated with that. To the extent that we don't allocate those to the NCA, to Glen Parkway, they could be allocated to the Cheshire. There were a couple of projects when we put those in place that Bill had identified. One of them was Cheshire, the Cheshire Connection, and that is something that we've had some conversations with Delaware County about, and their interest, I think, in seeing that project complete, because they see it as an east-west, one of their east-west collectors. So that's another one of those projects that could be a candidate project for those dollars, assuming that we make that policy change. So, and we have, as Dean indicated, we did make the NCA board aware at their last meeting that was a possibility. So, so that's what we have. We can. Our plan is to have this considered and acted on at the October 12th meeting. It's due to be acted on before October 15th. We would reflect the change that Councilwoman Keller had, the motion regarding that. I'll take a look at this Winter Street project and decide what we need to do there, if anything. And then obviously, as we've said before, the 2020 budget will have the recommended appropriation for the plan, but largely this is a plan that will take us over the next 5 years, and it's fluid, and there will probably be projects that will be coming back to you. Hopefully there'll be some economic development related stuff, but that's what I have.
Comments, questions?
I had one. It was regarding, it's on page 39, City Hall generator.
So we currently do not have a backup generator
Yes.
at City Hall.
That surprises me.
It surprises all of us when we lose power. It doesn't happen that often. I think it was contemplated. There was
Oh,
some
we've talked
history
about
there.
it a number of times over the years, and really looking at criticality, where there are operations here that, needed to be powered that way. We had UPS systems and stuff like that we'd be able to, deal with our software. But it was partly a building issue. There was just no reason, good place to put it. We have our data system down in the lower level, and it has a generator that's out in the front of City Hall. Doesn't look all that attractive, but that powers the data system. But other than that, there really was no compelling reason. We just haven't had problems with power outages for periods of time that we've needed to. And there's no real critical emergency type of services functioning out of City Hall that we couldn't adjust. And I can't think of a time where we really had any problems in City Hall. Now, so that's just.
But it's shown here, Bill, I think you had recommended it.
2023 I have written down.
Yeah. And
Right.
again,
And I think with, the goal now with the changes, looking at changes in City Hall, arrangements and where people might be in entranceways, that my suggestion back to Kyle was, why don't we just tackle that there and decide, do we want to do this or do we not want to do this? And incorporate that potential change with our thought process on the kind of revamping of City Hall, and then have an answer to that.
That's part of what I was thinking, is when we redo the upstairs and the project that Kyle is working on, to perhaps incorporate that. I just think if there were some sort of, other cities have experienced, it's unlikely, but tornadoes or some sort of derecho where we lose power for a week or something like that. Would we be able to conduct operations, or would we move to
we would, so the police department operates, you've got backup.
We do, and I think they're replacing one this year, Bill, or next year?
And I think John, I don't know what the EOS, the Emergency Operations EOP says, the Emergency Operations Plan with respect to that. But
It's certainly something that's been needed here. As far as our continuity of operations, we have a plan in place that if we had to relocate, or this building was damaged, or any one of our city buildings was damaged, as a process that we would go forth and relocating them and identifying places. Fortunately, most of those places that we would be going wouldn't have a generator. One of the things that, if we needed a generator right away, there are resources that would make it available to us. Of course, if it was a widespread event, then we're competing with everybody else to get those resources as well.
Okay.
And that's one of the things that was kicked around too, is do we set it up such that we could easily connect? We had a quick connect. We've talked about that a lot. With really more of our issues are our traffic signals, because we have all kind of, whether we haul around generators to run those traffic signals, but sometimes having an inventory of generators available for multiple uses. Sure, one of them, it may be just that we wire the building such that it's not that difficult to go and bring in a portable generator that we have if we needed to for a day or two, and we really wanted to power up the building and it was out citywide or something like that.
Not super critical, I just noticed, I never really thought about it before, but 2023 seemed far away for something I assumed we already had.
Okay, well, if we have nothing else, we do an executive? Okay. And I will look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We're adjourned at 7:01.
Wow.
There you go.